You paid $50 for a concert ticket weeks ago, but now it's the night of the show, it's pouring rain, you're stuck in gridlock traffic, and you're fighting a miserable cold. Every instinct tells you to turn the car around and go back to bed. Yet you force yourself to keep driving, sitting in misery, entirely because you refuse to let that $50 go to waste. You are trapped in what behavioral psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy. The logical move is to cut your losses and rest, but your brain overrides that logic, convincing you that enduring physical discomfort is somehow better than accepting a financial loss. This widespread frustration exposes a severe glitch in our cognitive processing that actively forces us to make the worst possible decisions. Look at the undeniable math of the situation. This diagram shows exactly what happens to your wallet. You bought the ticket, so the $50 is permanently gone. You now have two options: stay home or go to the show. Both packs end with the exact same minus $50 balance. Pushing through the storm doesn't magically refund your money. It actually compounds your losses, actively draining your time and health on top of the cash you already spent. The fact that our minds fiercely reject this simple arithmetic exposes a deep flaw in how human beings evolved to handle resources. And the exact same mental blind spot that forces you to suffer through a Friday night has the power to ruin entire careers and bankrupt international governments. The engine driving this destructive behavior is a biological mechanism known as loss aversion. For early humans, losing resources meant starvation. Because of that, our brains are hardwired to react to any loss of previously invested time, effort, or materials as a literal threat to our physical survival. That primal fear bleeds directly into our modern lives. People stay trapped in deeply unhappy relationships for decades, simply because they have already spent so many years trying to make them work. We see this chart playing out in investment portfolios everywhere. Investors watch an asset plummet, and instead of selling, they keep doubling down, frantically pouring cash into a sinking ship, hoping to recover their initial investment. Employees do the exact same thing, grinding away in careers they hate because they refuse to walk away from their expensive degrees. Loss aversion weaponizes our own past efforts against us. It forces the highly rational act of quitting to feel like a fatal failure. You might think that rigorous oversight and committees of experts would protect large organizations from this kind of emotional thinking, but the highest levels of global leadership are equally vulnerable. Take the Concorde project. In the 1960s, France and the UK signed an official agreement to jointly develop a revolutionary supersonic passenger jet. They immediately poured hundreds of millions into research and mobilized immense engineering resources to construct the airframes. The sheer scale of the commitment was staggering. But relatively early in the development process, the financial projections crystallized into a brutal reality. The jet's manufacturing and fuel costs were going to vastly outweigh any revenue they could ever hope to make from ticket sales. The math provided undeniable proof of an impending disaster. They were building a machine that would lose money every time it flew. Yet, paralyzed by the sheer size of the resources they had already spent, both governments refused to halt production. Rather than cut their losses, they doubled down. The political leaders were terrified of having to admit to their taxpayers that they had incinerated mountains of public funding on a flawed idea. So they stubbornly pushed the project forward for decades. They prioritized political pride and the weight of past investments over future economic reality. When the aircraft eventually took flight, it was an astonishing triumph of modern engineering. But as a business venture, it was a catastrophic economic failure. The project bled millions in operational deficits for less than 30 years, before the fleets were permanently grounded and the program was scrapped entirely. The Concorde stands as a multi-billion-dollar supersonic monument to the stubborn refusal to quit. It represents the absolute victory of loss aversion over logic. If a psychological trap is powerful enough to bankrupt international governments, how do you protect yourself from it in your daily life? The only effective antidote requires a radical shift in perspective. You have to forcefully sever your emotional connection to the time and money you have already spent. To bypass your brain's biological programming, you can use a practical mental hack called the zero-based framework. The next time you find yourself trapped in a frustrating situation, ask yourself one exact question. If I were starting from zero right now, with absolutely no prior investment, Would I make this same choice? Evaluating a situation purely on its future potential provides the clarity needed to override the biological impulse to protect unrecoverable losses. We are taught from childhood to view quitting as a failure of character, but in economics, it is a vital survival skill. Active abandonment of a failing path reflects a high level of rational strength, prioritizing future resources over the comfort of a familiar mistake. Take a hard look at your life right now. Try to identify one area, a failing project, an unused subscription, or a bad habit, where you are currently throwing good time or money after bad. Drop your most painful sunk cost stories in the comments below. Admitting the mistake out loud proves just how universal this flaw is, and it is the very first step to beating it.